The stale air of the suburbs hit me like a wall as I stepped out of the Uber. Tokyo was a vibrant, chaotic symphony. This was beige. My beige house, in my beige neighborhood. A pang of dissatisfaction, quickly smothered, pricked at me. Home was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place to decompress after weeks of immersive travel. Instead, it felt like stepping back into a life I'd momentarily escaped. I wrestled my suitcase out of the trunk, tipped the driver, and trudged up the walkway, the jet lag a lead weight dragging at my limbs. I envisioned a long, hot shower, a microwave dinner, and a deep dive into the latest season of The Expanse. The future felt promising. Unlocking the front door, I was immediately struck by a subtle discordance. It wasn't anything immediately obvious, nothing visibly out of place, but the air itself felt different. Staler than it should be after just 3 weeks, carrying a faint, greasy aroma that clashed with the lavender scent of the air freshener I'd religiously plugged in before leaving. I stepped inside, the clicking of my suitcase wheels echoing eerily in the sudden silence. My heart rate kicked up a notch. I told myself it was just the jet lag playing tricks on my senses, a phantom unease conjured by fatigue, but the niggling feeling persisted. Then I saw them. A pair of worn-out sneakers, definitely not mine, huddled near the shoe rack. Next to them, a stack of discarded pizza boxes, their greasy surfaces reflecting the dim hallway light. Each box bore the logo of Pizza Paradise, a local chain I hadn't ordered from in years. My unease solidified into a cold, creeping dread. I edged further into the house, my senses on high alert. A hoodie, the kind favored by teenagers with more angst than laundry detergent, hung carelessly on the banister. It was a color I'd never owned, a faded crimson that screamed, "I listen to sad music." The silence was broken by a muffled sound, a rhythmic thumping that vibrated through the floor. It was coming from the basement. Laughter followed, punctuated by the sharp bursts of gunfire. My pulse hammered in my ears. Someone was down there, in my house, without my permission. I crept towards the basement door, my hand instinctively reaching for the baseball bat I kept tucked away in the coat closet. Each step was deliberate, each breath shallow and controlled. Reaching the door, I paused, taking a moment to gather myself. This was my home. I had a right to be here. Whoever was down there, they were intruding. I gripped the bat tighter and slowly, silently, pulled the door open. The spill of light and noise hit me like a physical blow. The scene that unfolded before me was surreal, like stumbling onto a poorly funded community theater production of Teenage Wasteland. The basement, which I usually kept dimly lit and sparsely furnished, had been transformed into a makeshift living room. Fluorescent lights blazed overhead, casting a harsh glare on the mismatched furniture and the clutter that now littered every surface. A massive flat-screen TV dominated one wall, its speakers blasting the cacophony of a first-person shooter. And there, lounging on my futon like she owned the place, was Karen. Karen, the queen bee of the HOA, the woman who once sent me a strongly worded email about my unruly lawn gnomes. Karen, with her perfect blonde bob and her perpetually pursed lips, looking utterly, disgustingly comfortable in my home. Beside her, a young man, presumably her son Jax, or Max, I could never remember, sat hunched over a game controller, his face illuminated by the screen. He was shirtless, clad only in sweatpants, his pale skin glistening under the harsh light. The air was thick with the sweet, cloying scent of vape smoke. "What the hell is going on here?" I roared, my voice cracking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Karen barely flinched. She glanced at me with a look that bordered on condescension, as if I were the one who had intruded. "Oh, Darius," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You're back. We were wondering when you'd show up." Her son, momentarily distracted from his digital carnage, grunted in acknowledgement before returning to the game. "Wondering?" I sputtered. "Wondering? I live here. This is my house. What are you doing in my basement?" Karen sighed, a dramatic, theatrical sigh that was clearly meant to convey her immense suffering. "Well, Darius, we assumed the house was abandoned," she explained, as if stating the most obvious fact in the world. "We heard you moved away permanently. The community didn't want it to go to waste. It's a public good, really. My jaw dropped. The audacity was staggering. A public good. I never gave you permission to be here. This is breaking and entering. Karen waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't be dramatic. We were just keeping it tidy, making sure no squatters moved in. You know how those things can attract unsavory elements? I stared at her, speechless. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And the locks? How did you even get in? I demanded, my voice rising again. Karen shrugged, a gesture of simulated nonchalance. Google. It's amazing what you can learn online. Besides, we needed to secure the property, for your own good, of course. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Get out now, or I'm calling the police. That's when Karen pulled her move, the move that cemented her status as the undisputed queen of suburban shenanigans. She reached for her phone, her fingers dancing across the screen with practiced ease. A moment later, she held the phone to her ear, her face a mask of concerned innocence. Yes. Hello? 911? I need to report a break-in. Someone is trying to enter my son's rental unit, claiming to be the homeowner. He's some kind of drifter. I'm the landlord, and I'm very concerned for my tenant's safety. My world tilted. I stood paralyzed, caught between disbelief and escalating rage. Karen, the epitome of suburban respectability, was actively framing me for breaking into my own home. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. Her son, oblivious to the unfolding drama, continued to blast away at pixelated enemies, the rhythmic thwack 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 of gunfire a bizarre soundtrack to the absurdity of the situation. I knew I needed to regain control, to assert my rights, but the shock of Karen's brazenness had left me momentarily speechless. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to calm down. Panicking wouldn't help. I needed to think clearly, to present my case rationally. I ignored Karen's ongoing performance for the 911 operator and focused on preparing myself for the inevitable arrival of the police. I went upstairs, retrieved my wallet, and grabbed my mortgage papers and recent utility bills from the file cabinet in my home office. Proof of ownership, irrefutable evidence. By the time the police sirens wailed in the distance, I was standing on my front lawn, waiting. 2 officers emerged from the patrol car, their expressions a blend of professional neutrality and weariness. I held up my hands in a gesture of peace. Officers, I need to explain something, I said calmly. This woman, Karen, and her son are squatting in my house. I just returned from a trip and found them living in my basement. She's the one who called you, claiming I'm breaking in, but I assure you, I own this property. I presented my ID, followed by the mortgage papers and utility bills. The officers examined the documents, their faces remaining impassive. Karen, ever the drama queen, emerged from the house, her face etched with righteous indignation. She waved, a stack of papers in the air, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. Officers, this man is a fraud. He's trying to evict my son from his rental unit. I have a lease agreement right here, signed and notarized. The lease agreement appeared to be printed on regular printer paper, and I highly doubted it was notarized. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. The officers exchanged a look that suggested they'd dealt with similar situations before. Okay, ma'am, sir, one of them said. We need to separate you both and get your statements. Ma'am, if you could step over here with me. He gestured towards the patrol car. Sir, you can wait on the porch. As they began to separate us, one of the officers spoke into his radio, requesting backup. My stomach churned. This was spiraling out of control. As I waited on the porch, my anxiety mounting, something strange happened. A black, unmarked SUV pulled up to the curb, its tinted windows obscuring the occupants. 2 men in plain clothes emerged, their faces grim and serious. They approached the officers, exchanged a few hushed words, and then turned their attention to Karen. The lead officer, the one who had been examining my documents, wore a strange expression. He leaned close to his partner and whispered something into his radio. My heart skipped a beat. Something was very, very wrong. The arrival of the unmarked SUV had shifted the atmosphere from tense to downright ominous. The 2 men in plain clothes moved with a purposefulness that spoke of authority, their presence radiating an unspoken threat. They bypassed me entirely, focusing their attention solely on Karen and her son. The lead officer, after his whispered conversation with his partner, adopted a noticeably more serious demeanor. He addressed Karen with a newfound formality. Ma'am, can I see your son's identification, please? He asked, his voice devoid of the earlier polite neutrality. Karen, momentarily thrown off balance by the sudden shift in tone, fumbled in her purse before producing a driver's license. The officer examined it closely, his eyes scanning the photo and the details. He then turned his attention to the young man still engrossed in his video game inside the house. "Son, come outside, please," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. Jax, or Max, or whatever his name really was, reluctantly paused his game and shuffled out of the house, his face a mask of adolescent sullenness. The officer compared his features to the photo on the driver's license, then spoke into his radio again, reciting the name and date of birth. A tense silence descended as we waited for the response. My mind raced. What was going on? Was there something more to this than just a simple case of squatting? The answer came quickly, and it was far more shocking than I could have ever imagined. The officer lowered his radio, his expression grim. "Ma'am, your son is wanted," he announced, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Karen gasped, her face contorting with a mixture of disbelief and panic. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake," she protested, her voice shrill. The officer remained impassive. "Your son, identified as real name omitted, has outstanding warrants in 3 states. Identity theft, online scams, crypto fraud. The works." My jaw dropped. Crypto fraud? Identity theft? This wasn't just squatting, it was something far more sinister. The 2 men from the unmarked SUV approached Jax, their movements swift and precise. Without a word, they placed him in handcuffs. Jax, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, began to protest, his bravado evaporating in an instant. "Hey, what's going on? I didn't do anything," he stammered, his voice trembling. Karen, her face a mask of fury, launched into a tirade. "This is outrageous. You can't do this. He's being targeted because of his entrepreneurial spirit." The men from the SUV ignored her protests and led Jax towards their vehicle. One of them approached the uniformed officers and spoke to them in a low voice. The officers nodded in understanding and turned to address me. "Mr. Hill, we're going to need to secure the premises and conduct a search," one of them said. "We have reason to believe that this location may be connected to the criminal activities of the suspect." A wave of nausea washed over me. My house, my sanctuary, was now a crime scene. As Jax was being escorted to the unmarked SUV, Karen continued to scream, her voice reaching a fever pitch of hysteria. "This is all a conspiracy. They're framing my son. He's a good boy. He just wants to make a living." Despite her protests, the officers proceeded to read her rights and placed her in handcuffs. The charge, aiding and abetting a fugitive. The HOA board would be chatting. With Karen and Jax securely detained, the officers began their search of my basement. The initial sweep revealed nothing more than the mess I had already witnessed. The mismatched furniture, the discarded food, containers, the general air of neglect. But then, one of the men from the SUV, clearly experienced in such matters, began to systematically examine the walls and the floor. He tapped on the paneling, ran his hands along the baseboards, and scrutinizing anything and everything, he stopped at a seemingly ordinary section of the drywall near the back of the basement. He pressed on it with his fingertips, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then, with a sharp, decisive movement, he pushed inwards. A section of the wall popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. It was a false wall, cleverly concealed, revealing a secret room behind it. My stomach lurched. I had no idea this was even there. The officers exchanged grim glances and cautiously entered the hidden room. What they found was more shocking than I could have ever imagined. It was a full-blown scam bunker, a high-tech operation designed to defraud unsuspecting victims. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting a network of computers, crypto mining, rigs, and burner phones. Laptops were stacked on makeshift shelves, their screens displaying complex code and financial data. Stacks of mail, none of it addressed to me, were piled high in the corner. The air was thick with the hum of electricity and the faint scent of ozone. But the most disturbing thing was a large whiteboard that dominated one wall. It was covered in a chaotic jumble of notes, diagrams, and numbers. Account passwords, email addresses, and bank details were scrawled alongside dollar signs and cryptic phrases. It was a roadmap to financial ruin for hundreds of unsuspecting victims. The officers carefully documented the scene, taking photos and collecting evidence. As they worked, they explained to me the scope of the operation. Jax, it turned out, was a sophisticated cybercriminal, using phishing emails, fake websites, and other online scams to steal money from unsuspecting individuals. He had been using my basement as a hideout and a base of operations, exploiting my absence and my trust in the community. The realization hit me hard. I had been completely oblivious, a pawn in someone else's twisted game. Karen, the seemingly harmless HOA busybody, was an accomplice, helping her son to evade the law and continue his criminal activities. I felt a surge of anger, not just at Karen and Jax, but at myself for being so naive. The scene outside my house had transformed into a media circus. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, their faces a mixture of shock, curiosity, and morbid fascination. The normally quiet suburban atmosphere had been shattered, replaced by the flashing lights of emergency vehicles and the murmur of reporters interviewing onlookers. The local news was broadcasting live from my front yard. The HOA board, which had once been so quick to criticize my lawn gnomes and my slightly overgrown hedges, was conspicuously silent. No passive-aggressive emails landed in my inbox. No thinly veiled complaints appeared on the community Facebook page. Karen, the self-proclaimed guardian of suburban values, had become a pariah, her reputation irrevocably tarnished. As the FBI agents and police officers meticulously cataloged the evidence from the scam bunker, I wandered through my house, feeling a strange mixture of relief and violation. The air was heavy with the residue of criminal activity, a lingering reminder of the deception that had taken place beneath my roof. Sleep was impossible, so I sat with the FBI most of the night answering questions, clarifying that I had no idea this was going on. In the days that followed, I learned the full extent of Jax's crimes. He had drained over $80,000 from a retired couple's savings account using a sophisticated phishing scam, leaving them with nothing. He had impersonated government officials to steal identities and apply for fraudulent loans. He had even created fake cryptocurrency schemes, preying on the hopes and dreams of inexperienced investors. The devastation he had caused was immeasurable. The experience left me shaken, but it also gave me a new perspective. I realized that I had been living in a bubble, detached from the realities of the world around me. I had been so focused on my own travels and my own career that I had become blind to what was happening in my own community. It was a stark reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, disguised by seemingly harmless facades. I invested in a state-of-the-art security system, installed motion sensors, and upgraded my locks. I also became more involved in my community, attending neighborhood watch meetings and volunteering at local charities. I even started a cybersecurity awareness program for senior citizens, teaching them how to protect themselves from online scams. From then on, I paid more attention to my travels and didn't leave home for more than a week at a time. The events that unfolded in my basement had been a nightmare come to life, but they also served as a wake-up call. I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of vigilance, community, and the enduring power of human connection. And while I may never look at my beige suburban house the same way again, I knew that I would never let it be taken advantage of again. After all, it was my home, and I would do whatever it took to protect it. This experience also gave me a killer story to tell at parties, a tale of suburban intrigue that never failed to shock and entertain. And when asked about my travels, I would always add a little bit about being grateful to be home.